All right, unfiltered, unbuttoned, and no less unapologetic. You'd have to be tone deaf to hear the demands, the calls for police reform that we've heard over the last couple of months now, and we've seen a lot of that come to fruition around the country and even here in Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. Some major policy updates as a result of those demands from tens of thousands of people who've taken to the streets following that death of George Floyd in Minneapolis. We've spoken with activists, we've spoken with professionals and academics and sociologists, even some police officers themselves, and they opened up to the extent that they could open up. The guy sitting next to me to my right is a guy who's been in the profession of policing for close to 4 decades. Randy Hagler was a Charlotte-Mecklenburg police officer, promoted to sergeant before he took on a pretty prestigious gig as the police chief of Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools, catapulted him into a position now where he's the president, the state president of the Fraternal Order of Police, the state organization. Right. And 4 decades in the biz, man, you've seen some evolution. Oh my gosh. And I don't think you've seen any more rapid change or impactful change than what we've seen recently. What are your thoughts?
No, absolutely not. And I've written in numerous articles and stories in our FOP world about how we've never seen the kind of change that we've seen over the last 40 years that I've been in the business. We've never seen it before. And I don't quite honestly know where it's going to stop. It'll be interesting to see where reality comes back more center line and we get back to where we need to be with respecting our officers and the work that the vast majority of them are doing. And that's where we really need to be. We need to get back to a center line somewhere.
So is it, if I'm hearing you right, is it your thought that some of these demands for reimagining the police run counter to respecting the men and women in the profession?
Well, I mean, all you got to do is watch television and you'll see the beating that our officers on the street are taking every day from media and certain elements in the public, certain organizations. They're trying to destroy our way of life. They're trying to destroy our community's way of life. Because what you got to keep in mind is 80% of American people support the job that our law enforcement officers are doing across the state and across the country, and that's an overwhelming majority. So this smaller group is making much more noise and is gaining attention every day. The media feeds off of it. They get folks watching the television and read the newspapers when they print this stuff and when they advertise it. And so it's not been good. We've got to return our profession to where it was at. We're the good guys.
Let me unpack it. The policy updates, some of the reform that we've seen. It doesn't seem like you're troubled by too much of that. I think we both agree. We're not going back to when you cut your teeth as a cop 40 years ago, when I was a cop 30 years ago, right?
Absolutely. Don't want to. We're beyond that.
Yeah, I think some of that change is long overdue. Right. I don't want to speak for you, but that's where I land.
Absolutely.
I think if I'm hearing you right, it's the vitriol, the way that the profession has been defined, criticized, even demonized to a certain extent.
Absolutely demonized. Nobody is against that. But if you're not actually on the street doing the job every day, and see, you lose touch somewhat with that. I know I've lost touch since I retired. I try to stay plugged in with our officers, but there's only so much you can get by, a conversation over a beer or a soft drink or something.
Well, what are those conversations over those beers? And I'm going to say in advance, a little disappointed I wasn't invited to the conversations and, more importantly, some of the beers. That's just for, we'll talk about that offline.
Yeah.
But what are some of those conversations involving? What's the morale? What are you hearing? And I know that's no way to quantify a scientific barometer of it, but what are the guys and women feeling?
Well, again, I don't think anybody's opposed to reform as long as it's valuable reform. Mm-hmm. Reform just for the sake of reform is not going to do any of us any good. For one, it's not going to work. But if you have, and I'll just use one example, and I'll tell you that CMPD done this before I retired a number of years ago. And that's out. One of the things we've seen is chokeholds. We've got to get rid of chokeholds. Well, CMPD's not used chokeholds in years. That is not in the training manual. They don't use it.
But I will say, and I don't disagree. And my myopic way of looking at it, through the myopic lens I was looking at it, it banned any kind of airway obstruction an officer could perpetrate. Right. But what it didn't cover were strangleholds, someone leaning on someone's, carotid artery to the extent that you're cutting off blood flow to the brain. So maybe when you have the architects of this 8 Can't Wait initiative that are asking for, this reform, maybe they've given us in the profession an opportunity to go in with a new set of eyes, independent of the original drafters of the policy, and shore things up. I think we both agree that it should be blood flow to the brain and the air the airflow that was already on the books.
Well, absolutely, and I will qualify all of that to say that, you say you're going to ban chokeholds, but if an officer's in fear of their life and that's their only means of protecting themselves, then they certainly have the ability to use that tool to stop the assault or to save their life or another person's life. So we're going to say we're going to ban chokeholds, and that's fine. We shouldn't do it as in day-to-day operations.
Across the board, there's got to be wiggle room under exigent circumstances where they're either fighting for their lives or fighting to save the life, heaven forbid, of a community member. Absolutely.
But apparently there are departments around the state and the country that have not gone the step that we've gone, and that needs to happen. That's why this step back and look at our procedures and reform is not a bad idea. It's a good idea. It gives if you're not improving, you're either staying the same or getting worse. So I think we always need to move forward.
Well, look at the boxes, and maybe box check isn't the right term because that's lazy, low-hanging fruit. Look at the impact that shoring up some of these policies have. Obviously it serves the community in a lot more empathetic, realistic way, gives them clear understanding and expectations of how they're going to be served. But it also, I'd argue, shoring these policies up also helps the officers, gives them clear direction on what the department's expectations are. You can't have gray areas that live in policy because the human element creeps in, and sometimes people either fall short of perceived expectations or, worse yet, find loopholes and can circumvent policy.
Well, I don't disagree with that at all, and it's just the fact that we all know that the clearer the policy, the better. The easier it is for our officers to read it, to understand it, and implement it. And so that's not an issue at all. They just need to know what the rules are. What's
the morale like? And I know it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's in the eye of the beholder.
Well, we're talking about right here in Charlotte. It's as low as I think it's been in a while, and I'm thinking that it's going to improve. I think it's time that we start seeing the transformation. Quite honestly, what our guys need to see, and we've seen a little bit of it with our city council. We've got several members, and I'm not mentioning any names. We've got several members on council that do support our officers and are vocal about their support. But we've got others that'll stand up in front of a group of people and just absolutely bash the police and everything we do. And I'm telling you, that is a morale kick in the ass, without a doubt, when that happens.
Well, some could flip it and say the council members that you just identified there, not by name, but the ones who were more critical and scrutinized policy and procedures closer than other council members, they're representing a constituency, and they have an obligation as an elected official who represents that constituency to ask those tough questions and to scrutinize. You'd say what?
Well, what I would say is that all the council members are part of our city team, whether they like it or not. Now, I understand that they've got a constituency in the community that vote for them and get them elected. I understand that. It's a fair process. But I would encourage them not to say anything in public that they wouldn't come over to the police department and say in person to a group over there. They need to let the officers know what they're thinking before they stand in front of a camera in front of 2,000 constituents where they're trying to gain votes. We need to improve it in the building. They need to come over to the police department.
Oh, I don't disagree a bit, and I know that words have consequences.
Absolutely.
There's fallout, when things land poorly.
Yeah.
And I kind of took the same kind of position myself, and it wasn't too long ago, until I sat down with one of the more ardent critics of police, the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department, and Council Member Winston.
Sure.
He sat right there where you're sitting, and we unpacked it for the better part of 30 minutes. And I tell you, it transcends all the sound bites and the quotes and the sensationalism that that's been delivered up until this point. I walked away with a better understanding of, look, this guy, he supported pay raises for the police department. He's always been one of the first people to call either the police chief or me whenever an officer is banged up or needs some kind of assistance.
Sure.
When he, says the words defund police, it's not, that's a nice little slogan, but there's some depth to it. Maybe reallocating some of that money from police funding to more qualified organizations, agencies that manage some of these social issues, mental health, substance abuse, lanes that cops that I think we both agree should never have been in.
Right.
So I think we've got to, I don't want to speak for you, I'm really grappling and really trying hard, and some days are better than others, to listen beyond the sound bites, dig a little deeper and see what this person is really trying to say, absent of what you're hearing on the, on social media and the news and figuring it out. Your thoughts?
My thought is that's what our officers need to be hearing, because we obviously don't need to form an opinion based on a 25-second soundbite.
But that's the world we're living in.
But that's the world we're living in, and that's bad. But I'm just saying, all I'm saying is if these folks would get out and communicate more directly with our officers, then I think that that would get out. If they visit roll calls, if they come to see officers in their, we got 13 or 14 police divisions that have got their own offices all across the city and the county. Come out to those buildings, visit with those folks, see what makes them tick, let them know what makes you tick. And let's find common ground, because there's got to be common ground amongst us all, or they wouldn't be in the business.
Oh, amen. And it's got to be done collectively.
Absolutely.
Elected officials, police, community. This has got to be done by committee. I mean, look at the crime rate right now.
Right.
And if we think we're going to arrest our way out of it, or we're going to do it on our own,
that's never worked.
No, I mean, come on, with a straight face, we can't sit here with a straight face. We need everyone rowing in the same direction. This is a tough gig to give away now. It was tough pre-demonstrations in George Floyd. Now it's damn well near impossible. What are your thoughts there?
Well, I know CMPD is well over 100 officers short of where they would like to be.
176.
I knew they were well short, and they have been for quite some time. And what we're seeing from agencies across the state and the country are having the same problem. It's not unique to Charlotte. There is a shortage of young people wanting to get involved in this. And when you look at the reasons why, the simple thing to me, if I was thinking about it, I'd say, well, hell, there's 150 cops a year getting killed. This year already, for example, we've already had 30 officers. Let me back up. We've had 152 officers killed this year, which is almost what we had in all of last year. Now, obviously, COVID-19 has taken a lot of those. 76 of those officers have died from COVID disease. But 30 of them have been shot and killed. We've had 18, and this is across the country, this is not in North Carolina, we've had 18 officers ambushed. We got to look at what makes our officers safe. I know our department, CMPD, doesn't typically do it, other departments do, but two-person patrol cars. That has got some ideas that we need to look at and see if that would make it safer for our officers as well.
We're losing people across the board. We had 107 people, just 107 applicants, police applicants that were in the hopper, ready to be processed, head off to the training academy since March 30th that have withdrawn their applications.
That's a huge number.
Well, and if that wasn't troubling enough, during those exit interviews, some of them just flat out said that the vitriol, the climate in the country, what you're hearing on the national landscape, some of the dialogue that are coming from alleged politicians on the national landscape, but what they're, the way that they're demonizing this profession, they've said that was the trigger that prompted them to withdraw. That's 107 people that could have been serving our community at some point by getting through the training academy. Two of the more outspoken ones, young guys, Hispanic guys, they would have been serving members of our Spanish-speaking community, a community that we're really trying to build bridges with.
Absolutely.
So if people think that this national dialogue and some of that vitriol that's bubbling up doesn't have an impact on people desiring to get into this profession, they better think again. We're just kidding ourselves.
I'm going to be honest with you. I tell you who suffers actually as much or more than our officers is their family.
Absolutely. I knew you were going there.
And I'm betting that some of these officers were talked out of it by family members because they see the demonization that police are under now and how everybody's saying how bad we are and how corrupt everybody is. And they're all just out to kill people. They come to work to kill people. That's just bullshit. I've never met a policeman, and I hate to keep throwing this 40-year number out there, but over 40 years, I never met the first officer that come to work saying, well, I wonder I'm going to get to beat up today or shoot today.
Well, most officers hope to never go a whole career without putting their hands on their gun, much less having to take the life of someone. But look, it can't be lost in either one of us. I know it's more than 1,000 miles away in Minneapolis. When something like that starts bubbling up and goes national the way it does, it has a ripple effect on the whole profession. And the whole profession, whether we want to like it or not, is painted with a broad brush.
You're exactly right. We all got to buy what happened in Minneapolis. Everybody's got to accept part of that responsibility because we're all cops. The other, and I've said this a couple of times in interviews. We need to watch the judicial process. We believe in the judicial process. We need to see what happens in Minneapolis. That officer, as wrong as what happened up there, or as wrong as what appears to have happened.
You think they overcharged?
I certainly think he was overcharged. But it's that rush to judgment. We've seen it in Atlanta. We've seen it in Atlanta before the GBI was even started. Their investigation.
Yeah.
The DA was preferring charges.
And they were shutting it down. And there was a time it was getting dicey in Atlanta. Not too soon thereafter, where you're getting that blue flu.
Yeah.
And you know what? You think the violent crime rate's high now across the country?
Right.
You just start having these cops shutting down like that.
Right.
En masse? You ain't seen nothing. This is a walk in the park compared to what it's going to look like.
That's exactly right. And you know what? I'll be honest with you. I've never been a proponent of it. I don't think it's not why we got into the business to get pissed and walk off the job. But I can't blame those guys for doing it because that was as a blatant disrespect for our entire system as I have ever seen when you got a elected district attorney less than 24 hours after an event has occurred where he's putting somebody in jail before the investigation has really gotten started. Does that remind you of anything?
Well, it reminds me of a couple of things, and I'm trying to keep it as PG rated as I possibly could. But you're saying political expediency.
And you know what? We can't do it with the private sector. We can't do it with our police officers. It's as wrong to go to a crime scene and arrest somebody without all of the information as it is to go to a crime scene involving one of our officers and arrest him or her without all the information. You've got to allow it's not always what it seems, and you have got to allow these investigations to take place and run its course and then present it to the district attorney. I think what we're going to find, and we've seen news releases from the Attorney General from Minnesota, who is now responsible. He knows what a difficult case this is going to be to prosecute. He's seen the evidence.
Well, and more of that evidence is starting to leak out as the days go by. And to your point, if you thought that you saw public unrest or flat-out riots when this thing first occurred, if they don't get a charge, or if they don't get a conviction on this officer, I mean, you better batten down the hatches because it's going to be a disaster.
Yeah.
And some legal experts, one of whom I'm not alleging to be, say that could potentially have been an overcharge, that murder charge. And now you're setting society up with the expectation that somebody's going to be held accountable for a murder.
Right. The Attorney General of Minnesota has got the facts, and he's already alluded to what a difficult case this is going to be. What that says to me is the facts don't add up to what they've charged. And you're exactly right. If they don't hang the officer on the square, if there's anything short of him being tried, found guilty, and hung on the square, we're going to have problems.
We're going to have problems.
We're going to have problems, and it's not right. I mean, it's our process. It's our judicial process.
Well, I think that's and you know far better than I do. Just me being a retired cop, I think that's where cops kind of get hung up, is when the politics start creeping into the profession, and better yet, into public safety. That's not a good look.
No. Everybody has a right to their day in court. And I made that comment earlier that, we witnessed what looked like a heinous event in Minneapolis if you just strictly looked at the video. But we all know that videos don't always tell the whole story. And there's a lot more to that story than what we've heard. I hope it all comes out. I hope the officer has a fair day in court. And we'll see what the jury decides at the end of the day. That we will accept it one way or the other, and we'll be ready to to face what happens afterward, because it's coming.
Optimistic?
I'm optimistic. I think we've got to get through this issue first, and it might take 6 months to another year to get through this Minneapolis case. I know that there's a lot of support out there. We just got to get them to be a little bit more vocal.
Well, maybe that's just it, and they call them the silent majority. Maybe it's time for the silent majority to start
up.
chiming in now and piping up and speaking up, because maybe that's the morale booster
I agree completely.
that officers need. Randy Hagler, I know how busy you are, man.
Oh, no.
Came all the way over here to meet with us, and he is a busy guy. Been doing this for a long time. Well-regarded, well-respected guy in the profession. President of the State Fraternal Order of Police. And Ken, thank you enough for being here, my man.
Thanks, Rob.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate the invitation.
All right, Randy Hagler, pulling no punches. Speaking of punches, right? Tommy, one take on the back end. Been a little bit been a lot off the radar over the last several weeks. We can get into that in just a couple of minutes.
No one cares about that.
Yeah, they do. I mean, it's just been like an avalanche of complaints, people unsubscribing, wanting their money back. It's just it's been a disaster, and I hold you to a large extent responsible for it. Oh. We do have Tommy one take on the back, and you heard the interview with Hagler.
Yep.
Do you think that really captures a lot of the sentiment that's out there on the line right now for a lot of the line officers?
Yeah, I really didn't have much of a problem with what he said. I think a majority of the community does support law enforcement, but I think the voices that we're hearing predominantly right now are those against.
Well, what do they say? The squeaky wheel is going to get the oil, and if the silent majority continues to be silent, then officers are never going to feel as though they are supported to the extent that they could be.
Yeah, and you have city council members that will get in front of the camera and kind of voice their displeasure with certain things or things that they want changed. And, maybe behind the scenes they're saying they support law enforcement, but they won't say that on camera as much. Or, they may see an officers and say, hey, we support you, that kind of thing, but they won't say that on camera. And so...
Well, we don't think they're saying it on camera because that's not what we're seeing when we watch the local broadcasts or, the social media media stuff. And we don't know what's been cherry-picked for whatever reason, to advance whatever narrative wants to be advanced. But when we do have opportunities to sit down with council members like, outspoken council member Braxton Winston, he gave, stood by and defended his position, explained what his positions are. And I think you walked away with a different perspective. I know I sure as hell did.
Randy made a good point in that we just want to see at the table. There's a lot of talk about wanting to make changes for law enforcement and city council wanting to have policy changes and all that stuff. We can talk about policy changes in a minute, but the thing is that we just want to have a seat at the table and not be told how to do our job from people that don't necessarily have any influence or any experience in that area.
But the people that are asking for that and asking to be a part of that are the people that we serve, and don't we have an obligation to recognize and listen to how we're serving the people and, more importantly, how they want to be served? Should they have an influence in how they want to be served?
Influence is different than being told what to do. So they can bring stuff to the table. We can have conversations. But I think when you want to form these committees and all this stuff, and you know what? Yes, we do have a seat at the table, but I think it's very important that we continue to have that and that we're not being drowned out. And, it's
well, hold back, Tommy. You got something to say? Say
no,
it.
it's a touchy subject. I think there's a lot of voices that want to tell us how to do our job, yet they don't have the experiences that we've gone through.
Well, look at the process. This has been in earnest for, a couple of months now. This full court press to examine our policies, procedures, directives, and everything. And there have been influence and collaboration. What have we lost? What have we lost? What has the line officer lost? What has the profession lost by engaging in that collaboration?
Nothing. The thing is, you talk about the 8 can't wait. Mm-hmm. That's the hot topic right now. As a department, we believe we do all 8 of those things.
Well, the elements of the 8, but not, it doesn't align with the spirit of the initiative. And I thought it did until I read the fine print, and there were gray areas, with the chokeholds. Yeah, it banned any kind of airway obstruction, but it didn't ban blood flow to the brain.
Okay.
That's got to be shored up. And if it wasn't for the 8 can't wait, as well as I do, that wouldn't have been shored up.
But you have to agree, some of it is just semantics and language.
Well, or is it? You know as well as I do, unless it's baked into policy, you may do this, you shall not do that. As a former line officer, you're going to stick to the policy, right? And you can't be in violation of the policy if it doesn't, that verbiage doesn't live in the policy.
So yes, there's ways that we can improve, but at the same point, it shouldn't be changing verbiage just to make a group happy.
I think it was changing verbiage because if it wasn't, and let's just take the chokeholds and strangleholds. If blood flow obstruction to the brain wasn't in there, there was going to be some cop somewhere, sometime along the way that was going to lean on someone's neck and say, well, I didn't choke him. I just obstructed his blood flow to the brain. That's not a choke. And you know what? Technically, he wouldn't be in violation of policy.
I agree with that one. But you have to agree, too, that there's other ones of those policies where we're just trying to change verbiage, or we're looking at the verbiage trying to satisfy a group.
Take another one. Duty to intervene. You and I are partners, and I think you're managing a scene where we take a suspect out of the car and you're being heavy-handed. Our old policy says the only thing that I was required to do per policy was, after the smoke is cleared, report that to a supervisor. I had a duty to report. New policy says that if I see you heavy-handed with that motorist that you're pulling out of the car, I have a duty to not only report it after the fact, but intervene and stop you from doing it. That's impactful, right?
I think people get hung up on the language.
I think you're getting hung up with the blue goggles, man. Come on. I mean, we say we want to be real here. Let's be real.
Yeah.
So, and we go down around the Maypole all day about all 8 of these initiatives.
Yeah, and, CMPD put out shortly after that, talking about those initiatives, some of the stuff we've had enacted for 20 years, 30 years. And
Elements of them, yes.
Elements. And so there's always room for improvement. And yes, there are some things that we need to clean up, and we have done that. But at the same point, I think we have to be careful about semantics and language just to appease a certain group.
That certain group, in my unbiased opinion, is the community that pays our freight, the community that we serve. And I don't know if appeasing is the appropriate characterization of it. Maybe it's aligning with what their expectations are.
There's always room for improvement.
They give us the authority to police, and if we're not serving them the way that they want to be policed, then we don't have any legitimacy.
So what are your thoughts on the whole Safe Committees group?
You know what? Look, I think it was a very good group for them to assemble with a lot of different perspectives. You have a former assistant chief of police on there, business owners on there, community activists on there. I think that you get a good breadth of perspective that come in that are asking these tough questions, scrutinizing a lot of these policies, and giving their input back to the greater committee, who could bring it back to all elected officials on the city council. I've been privy to some of those input group meetings, and they've been a little hot and heavy, but I also think they've been opportunities for us to learn and grow. I'm sure that you see it probably in another way.
Yeah. Conversation is always healthy. Mm-hmm. I think, speaking for myself, it just makes some officers nervous when you see some of those people that are so vocal against what we're trying to do, having to say in those meetings, and what that means for the future of policing.
Or maybe it gives officers, once their input has been incorporated into policy collaboratively through what we decide to do with them, it gives officers clear direction on policy and allows them to work in a safer manner and serve our community in a more effective way and in a way that aligns with the community's expectations. I'm going to play contrarian.
You are.
Long,
hey,
Tommy,
that's okay. And there's both sides to it. Like I said, the biggest takeaway is, yes, let's have conversations. And there have been changes that have been made where, we feel, when I look at policy, I know I can't do that. But if we're just tightening up that language a little bit so it's a little clearer, there's no issue with that. We
haven't seen a lot of your face over the last several weeks. You've been off the radar. Haven't heard much from you. I've talked with you every once in a while on the phone.
Yep.
You, Tommy, one take, for those who've been asking about him, you had some situation.
Who are those people that have been asking about
There have been people asking about it,
Gotcha.
Flat out outrage. Some concerned.
Yep.
Was he in witness protection? Did you guys finally get rid of this guy? There was a lot of swirl that was really bubbling up. And
Gotcha.
I've tried to keep as measured as I possibly could.
Of course.
Some days are better than others. You had some COVID stuff going on with the immediate family, and you had a quarantine yourself. Oh, that must have been a treat.
I had a couple of immediate family members that tested positive for COVID. Everything's good. Everyone's healthy. Back to work now. But we just had to do our part and, shut it down for a couple weeks. And here I am.
What'd you do? You came back a couple of pounds lighter.
Oh,
Looked like you got
so,
a little color.
See,
so were you laying out in the yard?
I find it harder working from home,
Oh, I'm sure you're just killing it at home, right? We couldn't. Please, Tom, slow down. Everybody came out okay.
Yes.
So how did you occupy yourself for the last couple of weeks?
I've been busy working from home.
Yeah.
Doing the same thing I do here. Just
So this time card says.
I try to get you to come out to the farm, and
we were thinking about it. No, don't laugh. We were thinking about it, bringing the Vidcast out to the farm, and we could have had it in the duck pen, and that could have been quite a sight to behold. You don't want to get into the duck story, do you?
Nope.
No one wants to get into
still
the
not
duck
touching
story.
that one.
Right. How's the farm, by the way? Everything hunky dory?
Yep.
Cows good, and goats, and whatever else you got.
The chickens and the pig are good.
Right.
Yeah.
This guy was going to sell it short. Hey, Matt, appreciate you.
Yeah.
Good to have you back in
Good to be back.
the fold. Man, we did miss you. I mean, the workload that this guy takes up and off our plate is just tremendous. And
Appreciate that.
I'm glad that everyone in your family is A-OK and that you checked out negative. We made him get tested before he came in here. He had a mask on when he came in here, too. I made him take it off, so send me the nasty grams because we wouldn't have been able to understand a licking word the guy was saying. So appreciate you, Tommy.
Hey, glad to be here.
I appreciate everyone at home. Lot to do, lots of places to do it. You did it here with us, and we are eternally grateful. Stick around. A lot more of this dialogue to come for good reason. In the meantime, take care of each other. Stay healthy, stay safe, and stay tuned.